All right. Hello. So this is your notes for today. So you are recording your notes here on page 8 in your binder. So this is our agriculture and food systems notes. So how can we change food systems to help the planet? Because a lot of our impact does actually come from the food that we eat. So first of all, I want you to notice that the notes, I gave you kind of the beginning of the bullet point, and then I did not give you like specific words to fill in. I just left the rest blank. So you can either fill in with exactly the words that I have written, or you can summarize it in a different way that makes sense for you if you want to try and write fewer words. But we're kind of building up those skills to writing our notes. So first, what are the negative effects of farming on topsoil? So one of those is pesticides. They kill helpful insects and decomposers. So remember, pesticides are chemicals put on plants that are designed to kill any of the pests that might be eating the plant because they don't want that, obviously. But they do kill some helpful insects and decomposers. And decomposers are the like bacteria and microscopic organisms that break down the plant when it has died. So killing the decomposers means less nutrients in the topsoil, because part of their job to break down these plants is to take the nutrients that were in that plant and put it back into the topsoil. So when we don't have decomposers, we're not getting those nutrients back in the topsoil. Also, insects can become resistant to pesticides. So they might survive a pesticide, they reproduce, and their offspring are also able to survive through this pesticide, which means people have to use more pesticides or harsher ones, things like that. The plants themselves can have some negative impacts on the topsoil. Oops. So one is that they actually take nutrients out of the topsoil. So a plant, just like you have to eat food to get nutrients and grow, a plant has to do the same. It's just getting some of that out of the soil. So they're taking those nutrients out. And it takes thousands of years for topsoil to form to be full of all of those nutrients. So if we just keep letting plants only take out of the topsoil and never put back, that's going to eventually become a problem. So when those nutrients are gone, it's no longer topsoil and those plants just can't grow. It's just like if you decided to suddenly only drink water and not eat food. You're not getting the nutrients you need to survive. If you need, you can pause here before going on to the next slide. So what are sustainable solutions to modern day farming practices? One of them is contour farming. So this is where crops are planted with the shape of the earth. So this is designed to help on like hilly areas where if you kind of break up the soil in order to plant things, that soil can either just slide by itself or when it rains, it's going to get washed away. And so this is a way to kind of, instead of having it be sloped, it kind of makes levels on a hill to make it a little bit flatter and prevent some of that runoff and prevent erosion. So it's slowing that flow of runoff and prevents erosion. That picture there is an example of contour farming. You can kind of see how it has these weird shapes to it. And so each of the levels kind of on this hill are a different crop. So they swapped between alfalfa and corn. So it's giving it that color difference so we can actually see these levels. Again, you can pause here if you need to finish filling these in. Now, no-till farming. This allows the plants to naturally decay and put nutrients back into the soil. So those decomposers break it down, any nutrients still in the plant go back into the soil. So instead of like cutting it all down and removing it from the field, they kind of cut it all down, break it up into little bits, and let it stay on the field and be broken down naturally. So whatever nutrients were still there go back into the soil instead of being removed and put somewhere else. Again, you can pause here if you need to finish filling this in. Our next practice is crop rotation. So this is when farmers plant a different crop each year. So they might have like a 4-year rotation. They plant something year 1, something year 2, something year 3, a different thing year 4, and then go back to year 1. And so there are 4 different crops through those 4 years. And that's because different crops give and take different nutrients. So particularly with that no-till farming, if they allow whatever nutrients are in that plant to go back into the ground if they don't till it, and they're rotating what nutrients each plant needs, like that they're balancing that and picking the right kind of cycle of plants, they can make sure that the topsoil stays with all the nutrients it needs, right? So it's not always taking one nutrient until there's no more of that nutrient. So this keeps the nutrients stable and decreases the need for fertilizer, right? Fertilizer is the way that we put extra nutrients back into the soil for things. So we get it from somewhere else and we put it there. But if it's already there, we don't have to use all these alternative things. This also helps make fewer crop-specific pests, meaning they don't need as many pesticides. So for example, if there's a bug that only eats corn and you always plant corn in that field, you're always going to have that bug. But if you plant corn one year and then the next year you plant alfalfa, that bug that only eats corn is going to die off because it no longer has the corn to eat. And so you're not going to have as much of those crop-specific pests, and you don't need to use as many pesticides. Again, go ahead and pause here if you need to finish recording this. So what are some of the environmental impacts of our food choices? So one of them is travel, because everything has to get to where you buy it somehow, right? Everything is shipped from where it grew or where it was made to your store. That's using energy and fossil fuels, whether it's in a plane, on a train, in a truck, on a boat. Those things have to get to where you're buying them. And if it's something that's been processed, maybe they're coming from several locations to a factory and then from that factory to your store, right? So there can be a lot of travel involved with some of the food that we eat. A couple ways to help with this is you can buy food from local farmers and you can eat seasonal produce. So there's lots of farmers markets. There's one not during the winter, but the rest of the year near Park Center on Thursdays. There's the Minneapolis Farmers Market. There's a ton all over the place that you can buy from local farmers, so it hasn't traveled super far. And you can eat things that are in season, meaning they're currently growing, because if you're eating things out of season, they had to travel a long ways to get to you. So again, if you need to pause here to record this, you can. All right, another impact are foods ripened by chemicals. So chemicals are used to make them ripen faster instead of waiting for them to ripen on the plant. So because it's easiest to have a big machine collect all of that crop at the same time, whether it is ripe or not. They do that, and then they take the ones that aren't ripe yet, and they use chemicals to make them ripen, to be the thing that people want to buy and to eat. But they taste worse, and they do not contain as many nutrients because they haven't had as much time to take those nutrients from the soil, right? So the food you are eating when they're chemically ripened aren't going to be as healthy for you as ones that have been allowed to ripen on the vine or on the plant. Again, if you need to pause here to quickly record this, you can. All right, food waste, the next thing we need to talk about. So the U.S. throws away 60 million tons of food per year. 60 million tons of food per year. That is a ton of food. That is more than enough to feed absolutely everybody in our country. A lot of this food could be donated, but grocery stores don't want to. It's easier for them to go through and look at the expiration date and say, oh, it's getting close. We're going to take this off the shelf because people haven't bought it and we're going to toss it. Whereas if they wanted to get it donated, they need to actually spend more time, thus more money, to get that food to people who need it. So that is a big one. Our stores tossing stuff out instead of actually choosing to donate that food that is still good, but not going to be good long enough to sit on their shelves and get sold and then taken home and then eaten, right? Also, you should only buy what you know you'll eat. So hopefully you're not throwing away as much food. Now, this is a smaller portion of the issue, but is still an impact that we as individuals have. Also, when you do need to throw away food, composting it prevents it from being in the landfill, and it makes it have a lower environmental impact. If you need to pause here, you can. All right, last is the meat and dairy products. So the animals we raise for meat and for dairy, that accounts for 18% of global greenhouse gas emissions. Almost a fifth of the greenhouse gases that we put into our atmosphere come from the animals we raise for meat and for dairy. So that has a really big impact. So there are some folks that have chosen to go vegan because of that. But there are lots of things that aren't quite as extreme that you can do to help lessen that impact. You can buy your meat locally. So it doesn't also have to get shipped across the country or from different countries in order to be eaten by you. You could eat less meat, right? Maybe do switch off every other day. Meat one day, vegetarian the next day. Go back and forth. Or in general, you could move away from eating beef as much. If you look at the graph here, you'll notice this first one, beef raised for meat, has more than twice as much the carbon footprint as anything else, right? So beef raised for meat has the biggest carbon footprint there. So there's a lot of different choices that you could make in order to lessen that carbon footprint from the meat you are choosing to eat or the dairy you are choosing to eat. All right, that is our last slide. So make sure you have finished all of your notes there on page 8. And go ahead and rewind this video if you need to catch up on something that you missed.